Of nearly 50 tenants we have turned, we have only had to keep the full deposit twice. So, landlords, you must be upfront and organized to avoid complications such as the ones we have just talked about. Welcome to your Landlord Resource Podcast. Many moons ago, when I started as a landlord, I was as green as it gets. I may have had my real estate license, but I lacked confidence and the hands-on experience needed when it came to dealing with tenants, leases, maintenance, and bookkeeping. After many failed attempts, fast forward to today, Kevin and I have doubled our doors and created an organized, professionally operated rental property business. Want to go from overwhelmed to confident? If you're an ambitious landlord or maybe one in the making, join us as we provide strategies and teach actionable steps to help you reach your goals and the lifestyle you desire, all while building a streamlined and profitable rental property business. This is your Landlord Resource Podcast. Hey there, landlords. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to be talking about a guide to move-out procedures and security deposits. It's episode 7. I'm Stacy. I'm here with my co-host and hubby, hot man, Kevin.
Hey, landlords.
That's not awkward. All right. In this episode, we take a deep dive into the procedures landlords should follow when a tenant moves out and give you tips on how best to handle security deposits. We discuss what they are, how to manage them, how to distribute them, and if you need to, what you can legally keep for security deposits. We're going to start with the move-out procedure and what to do when your tenant gives notice that they're not renewing their lease, or maybe if they're on a month-to-month rental agreement that they're just moving out. And following that, we will tell you all you need to know about security deposits. So first, let's talk about what if the tenant is a good one and you don't want to lose them. Do you have any control over that situation? Maybe. But start with finding out why they're moving out. You can't control if they're moving out of the area or maybe they need a bigger space, but you can control situations like they've lost their roommate and they need more time to find another, or you raise the rent and it's too high for them. Or maybe you have a single family home with a no pet policy and they want a small dog. This is something else that you can control. Depending on where your rental is located, you should try to do what you can to keep a good tenant in your unit, especially these days. If you are in an area where other landlords are expressing how hard it has been to find a good tenant, or they've had to lower their rental rate to gain traction on applications, you really might want to consider doing what you can to work with your tenants to keep them in your unit. Consider the time it takes to clean and do all the preventative maintenance that has to be completed before a new tenant moves in. Think of the rent you're going to lose during that vacancy. Unless you're in a rent-controlled area and your rental rate is severely below market, think hard about letting that tenant go.
Now, if you are choosing not to renew a tenant's lease due to chronically late rents, continual lease violations, maybe you have a family member that wants to move in, or you've decided to do a major remodel of the space, then you typically need to give that tenant 60 days notice of non-renewal. Use the reminder app or a setting on your phone to remind yourself about 65 days before all of your lease expirations. This will give you a few days to prepare an email to the tenant.
We do that, and that is a huge plus for us using that reminder app on the phone.
Okay, so regardless of whether the tenant is staying or moving out, you should contact them 60 days before the last day of their lease to either give notice or request information about possibly renewing. Now, the renewal process can take a little time, so give yourself the extra month to process this renewal or prepare for their move out. Now, this episode is not about renewals, but we want to mention that before you renew a tenant, you need to advise them of what their new rent will be and also request updated pay stubs to prove they still are employed and can pay the rent. If you haven't done so in a while, get in there and do an inspection prior to renewing as well. We have a future episode dedicated just to renewals, so for now, that's our best tip. Okay, so the tenant is moving out, either by their choice or by you deciding not to renew. If the tenant decides to move out, the first thing you need to do is acknowledge their intent to vacate in writing. In the initial email we send, we say we are sorry to see them go and offer a pre-move-out inspection within the last 2 weeks of tenancy. We also let them know that we will send an additional email detailing the costs associated with not cleaning their unit. More on that in a minute. We then check on the marketing ad we have for the property. Does it need to be updated? Have you changed any of your policies or criteria for acceptance? Do you need updated photos?
Here's a tip. We wait for the unit to be empty, updated, and entirely cleaned before we show that unit. It's tempting to get rolling on applications, but if after the current tenant moves out, you find any issues that need to be resolved, like severe dry rot in a wall or a deck or a stairway, you'll need proper time to complete that, and you do not want to rush this process. Taking the time to make the unit look exactly the way the applicant will live in the space will increase your chances of getting a quality applicant because they can see you are a landlord that values a space they could be living in and that you care enough to present it in a clean, working order before showing it off to the masses.
Okay, we mentioned earlier about a pre-move-out inspection that should be performed about the last 2 weeks of tenancy. Now, depending on your state, this option may be mandatory. If not, it's a good practice to cover your butt on security deposit deductions. California mandates we offer the inspection within 14 days of move-out, but the tenant doesn't have to take you up on it. So if, after you send the first email offering this inspection and the tenant agrees, send another email with a couple of dates for when you can complete it. The next email we send about 2 weeks before their exit date is one describing what needs to be clean and what will be charged or deducted from their security deposit should an item not be cleaned. We also explain that if they do not have time to clean, we can suggest a cleaning company that they can hire instead. This email needs to be very detailed. Do not just say clean the kitchen, because your idea of a clean kitchen and their idea can be very different.
Yes, it is very different.
Be specific about every item you expect clean and how they should go about cleaning it.
Let me give you guys an example about how our emails read. They go something like this. Dear tenant, as stated in the previous email, you will need to clean your unit entirely. We are very fair, but particular when it comes to the cleanliness of our units. Below, find the charges we will deduct from your security deposit should your unit not be clean. And then we follow with a list like this. Interior windows, $15 each. Include the window panes and tracks, so please open windows and clean thoroughly. Interior window blinds, $20 each. Please wipe down each slat with a damp rag. Bathrooms. This includes the sink, vanity, toilet, shower, shower door, mirror, floors, shelves, etc. $200 for each bathroom. Kitchen cabinets. Also $200. You need to vacuum and wipe down inside the cabinets and drawers, leaving no crumbs or oil. Cabinet faces and drawers, you need to wipe down with a slightly damp cloth and some dish soap, nothing abrasive. Vacuum the inside of the drawers to remove crumbs, coffee grounds, etc. Please make sure there's no dust or grease residue. General kitchen area, the counter, sink, and floor, $75. Please wipe and wash entirely. The stove, $75. Use oven cleaner or degreaser to remove all the buildup. Refrigerator, freezer, $50. Remove shelves and clean fully. You may have to unplug the freezer to wipe it down properly. Microwave, $25. Clean inside and out, including the glass turntable. Dump fee for any items left on the premises, $250. If you move out without cleaning and leave items behind, we will deduct $1,250 from your security deposit. So that's kind of the gist of the email that we send out to our tenants after we have already offered the inspection, to kind of let them know what we expect from them. It's very important to be very detailed with that. Here's another tip. Green sponges are the worst, and they leave horrible swirl marks on your stainless appliances and cabinet faces. Suggest tenants use a blue-colored sponge or soft rag to clean. How we get around this is we include a blue sponge upon move-in with our welcome basket, and we have a conversation with the tenant when they move in to explain why it's important to use the blue sponge and not the green one.
The next step is to confirm the inspection time the day before via a text or an email. Ask them to reply, confirming if they will be there or not. All right, now we're getting to the inspection. Now, the whole point of the pre-move-out inspection is to show the tenant any cleaning or lease violations you might deduct from their security deposit. Now, in theory, the tenant will clean and address the issue so you will not have to deal with it when flipping the unit for the next tenant. So here's what we're looking for during that inspection. Okay, on shelving or wall-hung TVs. Now, often these require bolts or fasteners to hold them up. Unfortunately, these can create rather large holes in the wall, which need special patching. We have it written in the lease that any holes over a 1/4 inch will result in a fee to repair. Now, in our units, the walls are textured, so it's not as easy as just slapping putty on them. You have to know what you're doing. Lease violations, like unreported leaks under sinks, windows, or appliances, can damage cabinetry or flooring. They can also cause mold, which needs to be cared for in a specific manner. Now, on damages, we look for damaged windows or window coverings, damage to cabinets, flooring, doors and walls, shower, vanity, stuff like that. We also look for evidence of rodents or insects.
Ew.
And this can be from clutter or just a messy tenant.
Yes, we had one of those messy tenants. We just are finishing up an extensive renovation to a unit that had an unreported fruit fly infestation, and it was disgusting. Those flies and their feces were stuck everywhere, from the seal in the refrigerator door to under the smoke detector. And additionally, the window blinds and all the appliances had a ton of evidence of this infestation, and we had to replace everything. So let's just say that tenant's $1,200 security deposit did not make a dent in the cost.
Not at all.
No, not even for just the refrigerator and the microwave.
Exactly. All right. We're also looking for items that may not be the tenant's responsibility. We're looking for roof leaks, malfunctioning HVAC or irrigation, rusty rain gutters, stuff like that. Now, this inspection allows us to show the tenant what needs to be cleaned, repeat to them the cleaning policy, and reminding them to refer to the email that breaks down the instructions and fees should they decide not to clean. It also allows us to plan what we will need to repair or replace once the tenant moves out. If you've had a tenant in your unit for a while, consider replacing the appliances, carpet, window coverings. Get products ordered and picked up. Schedule installations. This way, once you've painted, you're ready to flip it quickly. Take your updated photos and start marketing.
And also, keep in mind that when you're doing these inspections, it's likely the tenant is still living in the unit. So the floors may have a throw rug covering a stain, a couch might be blocking a chewed windowsill, and there may be a poster hiding a hole in the wall. So you won't be able to see every area as you can when the unit is vacant, but you just do your best. Take photos of every room from every angle, plus any issues that you find. Then, if you end up in court fighting over the security deposit, your photos and emails are your evidence. You can show that, yes, you did inspections, but you couldn't see the burned hole in the carpet because the coffee table was sitting over it. Then you show the photos of before, during, and after the move out. If you find damages, discuss them with the tenant, explain that there may be a fee to repair them.
Now, here's a tip I have for you. The tenant may have a source to fix it, either themselves or a buddy, but it's really to your best interest to discourage this. You don't know if the person is qualified, and your repair costs often increases if they botch the job, and now you have to start from scratch to fix it all over again. Now, some damages a tenant can usually fix on their own are broken window blinds or missing cabinet knobs or drawer pulls.
That's a very good tip.
Thank you.
Suddenly, Every tenant is a DIYer when we start to find issues. All right. Following the inspection, follow up with an email detailing what issues you found. Even if you have a discussion with the tenant, follow up in writing with the issues that were found. Do not include repair costs here. Include the cleaning request and costs associated if the cleaning had not been performed prior to the move-out inspection being done. Confirm their move-out date and include any other instructions like you want them to turn the heater down or off, or make sure the gas knobs or the water sources are all turned off before they leave. And once a tenant has confirmed that they have exited the unit, get in there quickly, like within 3 days. Do another inspection to ensure they have cleaned and repaired mutually agreed upon issues. Hopefully they'll have it all ready to go and you'll have little to complete in order to get it ready for that next tenant. Make sure they have left all the keys, garage remotes, etc. Check the thermostat, adjust it according to the season. And if you find issues, this is where you need to take photos once again. Like if they cleaned only some of the kitchen cabinets or only half the window blinds are done, take some photos. And also take photos of any holes that require patching and any damages that you find that you may not have seen during the first initial move-out inspection. If you use your mobile phone to take photos, they are date and time stamped for the event that they have to be submitted to evidence in court. And here's a very important tip. Never take videos, as they are usually not admissible in small claims court. When you go to court, your allotted time is very short, like 3 to 5 minutes. So you'll need to hand the judge physical photos of the damage, and typically they do not allow you to hand over your phone to show videos, also because they usually include your commentary of the condition and the judge cannot be swayed. Got to keep it to the facts, ma'am. The first 2 weeks is your opportunity to get bids or repairs completed. So listen carefully to this next part. If you need to hire someone to come in to repair damages, make sure they invoice you with the current date, the address of the unit, and all the repairs made for that unit only. You cannot provide invoices to the court that have multiple units serviced in one invoice. You'll need one invoice with the labor and materials per unit. If you're doing the repairs yourself, keep track of the receipts and your time you spent repairing it. Depending on the damage, you might not have time to complete everything prior to your cutoff date, which then you'd have to send an estimate of repairs and security deposit deductions by that date. In California, we have 21 days and not 1 day later to send either an estimate of repairs or the final security deposit distribution form to the vacated tenant. And usually we do our best to send the final distribution before that 21 days. Our reasoning is that once they have the money in their hand, they're less likely to try and fight you. If you provide invoices, etc., plus show them photo evidence, they usually are just going to move on. So many states have adopted this 21-day policy, so make sure you know the laws and ordinances in your city and state. If you fail to respond in time, you may be forced to return the entire security deposit, and that's a very tough one to have to deal with.
Okay, now let's dive into those security deposits. Security deposits are not the landlord's money until after the tenant has moved out and the landlord has proven what damages they need the funds for. They are the tenant's funds, which they are allowing you to hold for them. Most states require security deposits be held in a separate bank account, not the primary bank account used for income and expenses. You may not commingle these funds with other money not designated as a security deposit. It should come as no surprise that security deposits are in the top 3 incidents that landlords and tenants find themselves fighting over in small claims court. That's why we gave you the tips on how to handle the move-out procedure.
Yep, that's exactly why. Let's back up a minute and talk a little bit about security deposits and what is important for you to know as rental property owners. First and foremost, know your state and local laws. Many states have laws, but the counties or cities within those states may have their own ordinances that need to be followed. These usually address the maximum amount that can be collected, how funds can be used, and how the rental property owner must handle the security deposit taken, meaning kind of bank account and if they require the landlord to pay interest back on the funds that are being held. It's important to note that as a landlord, you are not required to collect a security deposit, but most of us choose to do so as it's good general business practice and it protects us and our properties.
Okay, let's get to the basics. What is the purpose of a security deposit? It is collected to help ensure the tenant abides by the terms and conditions of the lease. Because it's refundable, it acts as an incentive for a tenant. If they know they can get that back, ideally they will pay rent on time and follow the rules outlined in the lease. So how do you determine the amount charged for a security deposit? Where landlord-tenant laws can sometimes determine limits, it is typically between 1 and 3 months of the rental rate. For example, states like Alabama and Nebraska limit security deposits equal to 1 month's rent, while states like California and Nevada allow it to be between 2 and 3 months' rent. Last we checked, there are about 20 states with no limit on security deposits. These include Colorado and Florida.
That was amazing to me.
Surprising, it
Yeah.
was. There are also restrictions on how much you can charge military personnel, as well as different security deposit caps for fully furnished rental properties. NOLO, a legal website, publishes a resource that links each state's security deposit limits, or not, so we will include that link in the show notes. Still check with your city or county for specific laws. For instance, California, as a state, allows a landlord to hold up to 2 months' rent for unfurnished or 3 months for furnished units. But on top of that, Los Angeles County requires landlords to pay annual interest back to tenants. If you are unsure of how much you should charge, check with others with a similar unit or charging in your areas. Check online sites and read other ads on Zillow, or ask a local real estate agent who deals with rental properties. When you go to your meetings for your local real estate group, ask what other landlords are charging.
We learned so much from those landlord meetings way back then.
Really did.
Yeah. So, when you go to market your unit, applicants may like your property, but if your security deposit rate is twice what someone with a similar unit is charging, you'll discourage people from even applying. Conversely, if you charge too low, you may end up paying out of pocket if the tenant skips out on paying rent or causes excessive damage to the property. You also need to consider if your property has amenities that others don't need to account for, like a pool or an elevator that may cost more to repair. And I cannot stress this enough, know your fair housing laws. You cannot charge a higher security deposit for families because they have small children, or to college students because of their age, or for service animals. We did an episode all about standard operating procedures, and security deposits is a perfect one where you can state your criteria in case you are ever challenged legally. For instance, you could state your procedure is that security deposits charged will be equivalent to 1 month rent for unfurnished units and 2 months rent for furnished units. You can go on to say, we charge an additional X dollars for pets, or X dollars for operating a business within the home in states and cities where exceeding 1 month rent cap is allowed. For our California properties, we have stated our security deposit rate is equal to 1 month's rent. However, there can be cases where we will increase the security deposit if an applicant has less than the required criteria for acceptance in regards to credit scores or financial qualifications. For example, our sixplex is in the state capital, Sacramento. With government offices in the area, we often get recent college grads applying for our units. If they cannot meet our criteria requirement with their FICO score and their credit history is lacking, but they meet our income and have positive rental history requirements, we have written that we can increase security deposits by as much as $500.
Okay, so when do you collect the security deposit? Now, this is one area where we do not waver. Security deposits should always be collected before the tenant moves in. If not, once they are in and they don't pay, you have to evict them to get them out, and you don't want to go through that. Either when you meet them in person for the move-in or before, collect the first month's rent, the security deposit, and any applicable fees as soon as they sign the lease agreement. Give them a receipt for the payment of the security deposit. In addition to the lease, The receipt is one place where, if you are required to pay them interest, this information pertaining to how much and when they will be paid can be restated.
I think it's also worth mentioning security deposits should not be taken in payments. They should be accepted in full prior to the tenant taking possession of the unit. Now let's talk about where and how to hold on to these security deposits. Where most states already require this, it's imperative that you hold your security deposits in a separate bank account from your general business account. We changed banks a few years ago and left the security deposit account in the old bank so that there was no chance of confusion or commingling. Many states and local ordinances require security deposit funds to be held in a trust or an escrow type account, so they are protected from creditors and they're clearly earmarked as refundable monies being held on behalf of the tenant. Let's say this again. Security deposits are not your money. They are the legal property of the tenant, and you are simply the caretaker. You must take proper precautions to make sure the funds are not used to cover operational expenses or unlawfully spent. Some states require the landlord to pay interest back to the tenant for the security deposit being held. It's a good practice to pay this interest back to them annually, as the required interest rates can change from year to year. Choosing to make a large balloon payment at the end of their 10-year stay can be complicated and costly if having to account for different interest rates per year.
So here's something to note. When accounting for the security deposit, it is considered a liability, not income. It falls on the balance sheet, not the income and expense sheet. However, it can be added to income after the tenant vacates if the last month's rent or a portion of the rent has not been paid. Okay, let's start with examples of when you are legally allowed to keep that security deposit. Where most states define reasons a landlord may withhold funds, your lease must state which situations allow you to keep all or part of the security deposit. If it does not, the tenant will have a strong case against you about wrongfully withholding funds. Now, common reasons to deduct from a security deposit can include failure to pay rent when they vacate, property damages exceeding wear and tear, we'll get to that in a minute, unpaid utilities, cleaning costs and fees to remove abandoned property, and terminating the lease before the lease end date. Now let's talk wear and tear. Wear and tear can be difficult to define, but here are some examples, and in this case, the tenant would not be responsible. Mineral deposits in toilets, warped cabinet doors, minor nicks on walls, faded carpet or paint. Now let's look at damages the tenant would be held responsible, meaning something that has happened through carelessness. Examples of this include tears, holes, or burn marks on the carpet, broken windows, excessive holes in the walls, damaged appliances, damage caused by pets, broken tile or ripped linoleum, stuff like that.
I have a very nice story to complement that. So we knew of a landlord who had a tenant, it was a mother and son, and they were living in a 2-bedroom apartment. The son wanted to be a DJ and had lots of equipment to mix music. And I guess there was some noise complaints, so the son took and stapled egg crate foam to every wall in his bedroom. When they went to move out, they pulled the foam down, but left thousands of tiny little holes. Needless to say, they did not get their security deposit back, as the walls had to be textured all over, and the tenant was really mad about that. Lots of people want to hang their big TVs, and those bolts create huge holes in the walls. And if those walls are textured like ours are, it's not so simple as just hitting it with some spackle and paint. So one requirement we put in our lease is that there cannot be more than 6 holes per wall, and those holes cannot be more than 1/4 inch in diameter. So let's discuss returning the security deposit. Landlords are legally required to return a tenant's security deposit within a certain time frame unless it is used to pay for unpaid rent or repair damages. Depending on your state guidelines, the timeline to return a security deposit or the information as to why you are not returning the security deposit generally must be sent to the tenant within 2 to 4 weeks of the date they move out. You also cannot keep the security deposit without providing an itemized statement. As mentioned earlier, You must provide proof of unpaid rent, copies of invoices and receipts, a log of your time spent, plus any proof that the work was performed on the rental property to repair the damages you are deducting for. Like we said before, state of California is a strict 21 days for notification. That's the first notification. This means the landlord has 21 days, not 1 day later, to return the security deposit or send the estimate of work that needs to be completed, which the security deposit funds will go towards. They will then have up to 14 days after completing all that work to furnish final receipts and refund the remaining security deposit if there's any left. Withholding a tenant's security deposit past the allotted time can result in a lawsuit, one you likely will not win if you did not notify them of any issues within the set timeline. Here's another cute story for you. Our middle guy was away at college here in California, and he and a few other guys were renting a small home near campus. We've talked about this house before. And I need to say this place was a dump. And it was disgustingly dirty when they moved in. Now, I'm a mom, and the guys didn't really care, but it grossed me out. The carpets were stained and dirty, and they looked like they were from the 70s, and the bathroom had mold all around the bathtub. And when they went to go move out and they gave their notice to vacate, being our kid and all, we advised them to ask for a move-out inspection. And they did. And when the landlord was there doing this inspection, he told them what he expected to be clean, like the refrigerator and the stove and the bathroom. And there was one bedroom that had broken blinds in it. And he told them, don't worry about it. They're old and I'm going to replace them anyway. So they cleaned everything as instructed, as college-age boys would. He did not ask them to, but the boys went around and they filled in all the holes on the walls from the stuff that they had hung up. So they moved out June 1st. And by the middle of July, they received a notice from the landlord stating that they are not going to receive their security deposit back because they had not cleaned anything and they left the unit with broken blinds. Now, boys being boys and not seeing how they left it at move out, I cannot say how clean they left it. I will say that they left it clean or not cleaner than how they received it. And because the landlord took so long to notify them, we helped our son draft a letter detailing what the landlord had requested at the move-out inspection and what the boys had cleaned. Furthermore, it was clearly noted that if he felt the need to fight the boys about the return of their security deposit, given it was clearly past the 21-day deadline, they'd be happy to see him in court. Well, let's just say they got that full refund back in 5 days after that letter was being sent.
And all the guys really appreciated and thanked you for that.
They were I know. Good times. So NOLO, as Kevin had talked about before, it's a legal website, also has a chart that shows deadlines for returning security deposits by state, along with state security deposit statutes. And we're going to include both of those links in the show notes as well.
All right, now we're going to talk about how to avoid security deposit disputes and the lengthy process this can lead you. And you don't want to go down that road. Okay, in nearly all states, you must provide an itemized statement of what the tenant's security deposit was used for. If the tenant disputes the charges and files a lawsuit, you'll be required to prove that the damages occurred during their tenancy and that the cost of repairs matches the amounts withheld. Always be prepared. Make sure your lease clearly states who is responsible for what maintenance work on the unit. This is where doing inspections is vital, and we cannot say that enough.
Nope.
Inspect prior to move-in. Take photos and complete a checklist to show the unit did not have the damages before the tenant took possession. Inspect during tenancy to look for lease violations and perform preventative maintenance. Have records to show all of your work and findings. Inspect prior to them moving out so they are made aware of the issues. Inspect after they move out to see if there are any additional items you could not see when it was furnished. We have a free download of a move-in, move-out checklist. It is to be used exactly for this purpose. We'll put a link in the show notes, and it's exactly what we use every time.
Yeah, it's our form. We just made it out for you, we transferred it for you guys to use. All right, we're almost there. Let's finish off with some important tips. I want to start by saying do not designate specific deposits. And what I mean by that is, in the event you feel you need more money for a deposit than your criteria states, you can usually ask for an additional deposit. As mentioned earlier, these are most common for pets or tenants who want to run a business out of their rental. So let's say you allow pets and you want an additional deposit to cover possible damages from the tenant's pet. You do not label it a quote-unquote pet deposit. If that pet does not damage the property, the landlord cannot use the funds from the pet deposit for a non-pet related issue like mold remediation, clearing and dumping personal belongings that were left behind, or replacing laminate flooring in an open concept area where the flooring must match. If you need a higher deposit and don't want to label it under the security deposit, add an addendum to your lease and simply label it additional deposit. This deposit will cover any damages that may be found during the move-out inspection. And also, never designate security deposits as first and last month's rent. That's pretty old school. By doing this, you are essentially only receiving rent for those months of the lease prepaid. You do not have any funds available for damages that could occur.
Have thorough records of all correspondence with the tenant, including move-in inspection form signed by all parties, maintenance or repair requested and completed throughout the duration of the lease. These should always be in writing, either by email, text, or electronic form submitted through an app. All correspondence regarding the repair should be in writing as well. Your request for a move-out inspection to show them items that need to be remedied and to avoid deductions from their security deposit. Your detailed invoices incurred for final repairs with the unit address and unit number on each invoice. Final documentation of what their security deposit was used for, if applicable. If you find yourself needing to defend your actions in front of a judge, a landlord better make sure they have all these documents and photo ready for the judge to see. Make sure you can print your emails, texts, etc. to submit as evidence if needed. Now take photos of every angle of every room before move-in. Photos from phones and digital cameras have a date stamp and can prove that dent was not in the dishwasher before they moved in. In the same way, landlords should take the exact photos at move-out. Keep these in the tenant file or have it noted which electronic folder the photos are located, so you can find them easily. It can take months for the tenant to act on a legal action against the landlord. By then, hopefully, a new tenant is in place, but you have no recourse at that point to prove the damage occurred during their stay if you don't have proof dated within their lease terms.
All right, here's another tip for you. If you have a tenant that left without notice and you don't have a forwarding address for them, send the security deposit or the breakdown to the property address of your unit that they rented. Likely they filed a form with the Postal Service to forward their mail to their new address, and if not, the postmarked form will be returned to you as undeliverable, or it'll go back to the mailbox of your rental property. And you now have that piece of mail with the postal mark date to put in your file. They will contact you at some point to inquire about it, but they certainly cannot say you did not make the effort to contact them in the proper amount of allotted time. And finally, we hand our units over to our tenants in spotless condition.
They really are.
When they move in, we make them sign off on the condition of the unit with the move-in inspection form within 7 to 10 days. And this form confirms they received the unit in clean and good working order. If they find dings on the floor or a dirty cabinet, it should be noted somewhere on the move-in form that they provide back to you. And if this happens, we will consider that damage or uncleanliness as pre-existing when they move out. And often we already have it marked that these are issues, like the dings in the floor or the dishwasher. Those are already on our form prior to the inspection. Bottom line about security deposit, it's the tenant's money you are holding in trust for them just in case. There are strict fines in some states when you do not follow the landlord-tenant laws, so run your rental property business in a professional manner by knowing your laws and local ordinances. In the 17 years we have been property managers for our own properties, we have only kept a full deposit. How many times, Kev?
I believe it's 2, Stacy.
2 times. You got it.
And we're proud of that.
Yes. Of nearly 50 tenants we have turned, we have only had to keep the full deposit twice. So, landlords, you must be upfront and organized to avoid complications such as the ones we have just talked about. Know your landlord-tenant laws as well as your fair housing laws.
We have come to the end of another episode. We want to thank you for listening and hope we've given you some valuable information you can use. We hope you are a regular listener to this podcast and have already subscribed. And if you're new here, we'd love for you to follow us. Either way, we would really appreciate you leaving a comment on whatever platform you use to help spread the word to other landlords.
Yeah, and if you have landlord friends, we would really appreciate you letting them know about our new podcast. We're still trying to get out there, so that we can use all the help we can get. And if you'd like the episode dropped straight to your email, we include the link in our free newsletter, Landlord Weekly. To subscribe, you can go to yourlandlordresource.com/subscribe, or we'll put a link in the show notes as well. Thank you again for joining us. I'm Stacy.
And I'm Kevin.
Until next time, landlords, you got this.